Hello and welcome to this month's coffee break. Stop working for your unified storage. Let it work for you. My name is Andrew Miller, lead principal technologist, joined today by Jonathan Carnes. Thanks so much for being with me, for jumping in the boat here today, John. So I think I'll pull the music down here a little bit as we get going. Keep it low a little bit as we get started out. As always, this is a series. Thank you for joining us for this month's coffee break. If you enjoy this, or you listen to previous ones, always want to highlight that we keep all the previous ones online. You can find them both at purestorage.com/events, the previous ones, as well as we actually maintain this Google slide that has all of them, and some they're actually organized by topic. We found that this format actually ages a little better because we try and keep it a little more agnostic, and it's not just about the tech. It's about things that surround the technology and the Pure products. And then you can even see previous ones there. I do want to make sure to highlight this is the last coffee break before Pure Accelerate. That is literally next week. I will be out there. I think I'll see you out there, John, too, as well as a bunch of other folks. Heads up for anybody that wants to join. There is no live streaming this year of the keynote. However, the keynote replays will be up quickly on the Accelerate Digital landing page, probably on 24 to 48 hours. Definitely recommend watching those. And all the sessions are going to be recorded as well, which is actually pretty cool, too. But for the last time, the amazing 42-second video for Accelerate. I almost feel like, John, I should narrate over this 3 other days. More than 60 live sessions, keynotes, breakout sessions, product demos, and free training with certifications. You have to pass, though. Learn, connect, and accelerate. I don't think I'm going to get paid extra for my voiceover work there, but, I don't think anyone's counting.
Oh, couldn't hurt.
So, as always, there is a gift card drawing. There's a gift cards for attending. The first 1,000 participants to register and attend. I recognize that's often why people join, so thank you for that. And we will do the drawing at the end. I was actually really cool. I was in Columbus, Ohio for some EBCs, kind of EBCs on the road or field EBCs this last month. And I actually met one of the folks, I should leave him nameless, who actually won one of these. And I was like, hey, that's kind of cool. So we do actually send these out, and he got it. I am your host, as always, Andrew Miller. I don't, as you know, usually like to go through all of my background because it doesn't make sense since I'm here every month with you. But in this case, when it relates to unified storage, which is talking about file and block, I actually started all the way back running an Apple file server when I was on the help desk side. And I remember how you could do a copy and it would do it server side and not run it through the clients. And then went over to the IT operations side and started with Netware, RWCEMFA, if you actually have Netware certifications that never expire. But, so I've been playing around with file stuff for a while. There was Linux in there, as well as some Windows file servers, and then eventually, some of the storage vendors. John, you've been at Pure for a little while, though. Do you mind giving a brief run through of your background, and then we'll spend even more time doing it in actually maybe even of your current role, because we're going to wander into your background in section 1.
Yeah, so I've been at Pure for 6 years. 5 of those I have covered unified offerings on FlashArray, file and block. So covering the SMB, NFS protocols, and currently working on file services as one of the PMs.
Because of some of that background that you see there, we'll talk about that more too. But thank you. And
I've been around IT since the 90s. So I started out in Netware, like you. Well, a little bit like you, and back in Netware 4, I believe I started on working on NAS products. That was, yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit later, I guess. I'm sure.
Yep.
But yeah, and
next month,
pictures of me and my wife at I believe that's Dead Horses Point, and then my little family. I've got 3 daughters, and that's who I work for.
I love the train. I assume that's a train. That looks like a train.
At a theme park here in Utah. Yeah.
Cool. Hopefully you'll join us next month as well. I do want to make sure to highlight each coffee break is great, right? But Pete Kirkpatrick is a very unique guest to have. I first saw him present for Tech Field Day a while back. He's been at Pure for about 10 years and is the VP of Engineering and Chief Architect for our platforms division. So he's done some pretty amazing things around leveraging all different kinds of flash and technologies that sometimes you're like, well, that's under the covers, but this is a little bit of pulling back the curtain of, the Pure labs and even the Pure hardware labs. It relates to that great Alan Kay quote of, if you love software, you're going to end up making hardware, the right hardware at the right time. But join us next month. And I think, Olivia, if you don't mind tossing the registration link for that in the chat so folks can register. But this month it's all about you, John. So, Pete's great, but this month you're more great than he is. So, and I might say that to Pete next month, just full disclosure. So, as always, we keep a little bit of the same lightweight agenda and not too much. And here, going with a little bit of it's not snark, but what's old is new. Some of these are topics we've been talking about for a while because we need them. So we're going to do is first wander through some of John's background, actually, maybe the IT version of planes, trains, and automobiles a little bit. Then explore what is unified really. What does unified storage really mean? A little bit of blast from the past, a second movie reference in case you know that one. Third, tear down this wall. Sometimes there's been divisions or different ways to define unified storage, how we're approaching it, how we believe we truly unify it. I was thinking of that as a Cold War Ronald Reagan quote in Berlin. John, you were thinking of it as a Pink Floyd reference. Either way, you could decide. I think you're cooler there, but oh well. And then we'll wander into some of just what's new in this space that we've been doing specifically. But before we dive in, if you don't mind, Olivia, kicking off the first poll. And so this is, both a little bit of just having fun, as well as diving in. So what is your favorite way to travel? John, do you want to answer that now or later? I'm curious.
I actually like travel by automobile.
Yeah. So this would be the
I like
American
sightsee. Yeah.
And this is, man, they're coming. So we'll let this go. And then also, where did your file background start? Because I'm guessing for a lot of the folks on here, they've been doing some of these pieces for a while, or maybe not. Please feel free to put in the chat if you're like, oh, the survey doesn't fit who I am. That's fine too. So kicking it off, John, a little bit of we wanted to walk through kind of your history in the file space. Some kind of lessons learned and principles you brought with you into the role. And you were even saying, planes, trains, and automobiles, you keep seeing the same things over and over again. But do you mind just kind of starting out with where you started as a sysadmin even, and just kind of wander through a little bit if that's all right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to keep it brief. When I was 14, I was in high school and we had a, old school token ring IBM network, with an AS400 server.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to figure out how to kind of like, get into that thing. And eventually I did, and I got caught, and they decided to hire me under a distance learning grant that was going around back in the 90s. And so I ended up working for the school, the entire district actually. And we converted from that token ring network to an IPv4 network. And doing Netware servers with, obviously Windows 95 at the time, and doing all that. I mean, basically, it was a kind of a weird experience to have, and being at first being a computer network technician, and then eventually, by the time I was a senior, I was kind of working as the junior sysadmin for the entire school district. It was very interesting work. Got to kind of grow up with a lot of technology that way. Which is very rare, I think, for a teenager to do that back in the 90s.
But you even then wandered. And I was even thinking background. Actually, I started in the help desk, and then I started doing Netware stuff on one of the IT operations. So it was around the same generation. I think Netware 4 and eDirectory is still the best directory, but sadly it didn't matter. Some of that I think is out there. But you even kind of wandered away from tech and then back into the MSP side. You mind continuing there?
Yeah. So I, after high school, I went on a mission for my church and then came back. And I actually got into retail management for some reason. I kind of found I don't know, it was just one of those things that I wanted to try out and see how it worked. I did it for a couple different places, Walmart, Circuit City. And then when Circuit City kind of went out of business, I kind of said, well, retail's probably not where I want to stay. Then I went into MSPs from there on out. So I worked for a couple different MSPs, working for some that worked for DoD, TSA. I worked for BlackRock Financial for a while. And then I went into a local Utah MSP that did had a bunch of clients nationwide, but and that really you touch almost every type of technology there was in that type of role.
Well, so we were chatting. What I found was fascinating. You were saying, just think about file platforms. So Netware, but you work with a whole bunch of different file platforms, and even I think you kind of almost had some lessons learned out of that. Just keep going there if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think we had almost all kinds of file platforms. We had Windows servers, we had NetApp, we had Compellent, we had some Solera. Yeah, I mean, you name it, probably was in the data center.
Mm-hmm.
And I ran the data center, so I really had to work with a lot of things. Um, and so what I found out though was basically looking at all the different strategies, looking at all the different companies, it really came through that like one platform couldn't fit. We tried to do it as an MSP, like we tried to like we came
This
out
is
with
the
our
one.
kind of file
Yeah.
server and said, hey, this will be the one for everybody. And it just didn't happen. So it was kind of interesting to learn that, like, you could try to make it fit, but then eventually you would hit some sort of, maybe you need to scale out, maybe you need to scale up, maybe you needed, more SMB or more NFS. And it just came true that like one product usually didn't fit at all. And that's actually something I see that Pure is taking full hold of, we'll talk
Mm-hmm.
about that later, I think. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
I'll
that
tip.
lesson really stand true when I was there.
I mean, some of those solutions were scale up file solutions, some were scale out file solutions. They all got created for specific reasons. There were startups that took advantage of those gaps because there was a gap there that they could take advantage of, and then either they'd make it, or they'd go out of business, or they get acquired, or all of them, kind of thing.
Well, that's
Um,
where plane, trains, and automobiles
yeah.
comes up for me. Is like I
Uh-huh.
would work for some of these NAS vendors, like Netware. It was around for a while, and then it would kind of crash. Like Netware's not around anymore. Then you would switch over to another one. It would just seem like it's promising, and then it would kind of go away. There's been some that have stayed true, right? NetApp,
Yeah, long time.
AMT, Phoenix, and stuff like that. But there was a lot that kind of fell to the wayside.
Well, and then what we also had is at times, thanks to this is just the life cycle of IT companies and startups and products, is that the platforms over time would consolidate either at a code level or an acquisition level, and so you'd have the same company, and maybe it feels like the platforms are built by totally separate companies because they were. It's not good or bad. It's how it happened, kind of thing. I think last piece here maybe is there was at one point you were digging into a not too fun situation, kind of around all the layering of the technology that happens here. Do you mind kind of walking through that story a little bit without any names here? Doesn't need to be names on this one.
We'll just say competitor.
Yeah.
But one of the things one interesting experience that taught me a lesson about layered NAS products is where you have, a lot of companies put block on top of file or file on top of block.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And what happened in this case was that we had a company that was doing video surveillance to file systems. And because they weren't really paying attention to the lower down layers, like the block code, they had actually lost disk. Disk had been replaced several years ago that hadn't fully been replaced correctly, but kept the file system live.
Mm.
And eventually what had happened is they went to go check to restore video, to pull video, due to a robbery that had happened. It was a financial institution.
Mm.
And they couldn't, because the entire file system had been dead for years, but nobody knew because of the way the layered technology worked. And
Still
so it
accepting.
was just basically, and it was one of the things that really, stayed with me, is like seeing how, when you have to manage all those layers, it's kind of hard to pay attention to all of them all the time.
Mm-hmm. No, I even think there of maybe this is cheap joke time, but a little bit of hey look, ma, hey look, dad, dev null has infinite capacity. You just can't ever retrieve anything from it, right? That's the equivalent, essentially.
Pretty
You
much.
didn't know it. I think I'm going to go ahead and we'll move into section 2 here. John, I want to make sure I didn't keep you from putting anything else in. I'm looking deeply into your eyes. Cool. I think it looks like we're good to keep going. So, and actually, let me go ahead and I will end this poll and we'll share it in just a second. But we're going to start to wander into now, maybe blast from the past. What is unified really? Because there can be sometimes questions about this. But let me go ahead and share the results from poll 1, just in case you're curious. It's not an even split, but there's no clear. I mean, planes, trains, automobiles, everybody loves all of them. Trains, actually, that kind of follows. I do more plane stuff, frankly, because my family overseas. But then also we've done long road trips too. It's like the flexibility of just when you want to go, you go. That's the car, right? It's a little bit of American dream and freedom in there. And where did your background start? So actually, what's funny here to me is SMB in Windows, that makes sense, but Netware is still in number 2. That's pretty crazy. So, and kind of cool, actually, to be honest. So, okay. So then I want to actually, let me make sure here. So, well, yeah, actually, before we go to poll 2, so let's actually continue maybe with Oh, you were actually alluding to this already, John, a little bit of maybe kind of a brief history of NAS, because you mentioned file on top of block, block on top of file, but it even really started back with, I want to say, Linux and Unix and Windows, and of course NetWare then kind of came into that. But you might kind of chat a little bit about where NAS came from, and even then why people wanted unified as well. But back to you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, file storage has been around forever, right?
Mhm.
Before it was even shared storage.
What's old is new.
Obviously, everybody's
Yeah,
been, and surprisingly enough, people probably still have some of those files floating around
yeah.
because you never delete a file, right?
Mhm.
But I think the term NAS, started out when you get shared storage, right? That came
Yeah.
from Windows servers being sharing across networks, Netware, some of the other, Linux servers that would share out. So when you got in, when you got to the sharing protocols like CIFS and NFS, like V1 and things like that. So those allowed us to really share the data across. And then where the term unified comes from, or even what I would call multi-protocol arrays,
Better
it's
term.
when
Yeah.
people saw they want to consolidate. They had multiple Windows servers, they had multiple things. It was, the complexity of trying to manage all those upgrades and availability. They wanted higher availability. They want ability to consolidate workloads together, because what they would often find is you'd have these servers running off of block data, but they would need shared storage. And those would be on two separate devices. So a lot of times it made more sense, bring it all together, condense it all, consolidate it all, and it made life a lot easier to manage. But I mean, many times, early attempts to combine protocols usually ended up being where you still had to manage both, to manage one or the other. So to
Different
manage
management
file, you'd have to manage
interfaces.
your block as well, because technically they just kind of married two devices together. And
They're using.
so that's where I think that's kind of the history. I mean, we could probably go a lot deeper than that, but really speaking, that's what I think really kind of you grew
Yeah.
from single file shares,
Mhm.
NAS heads, and then to unified or multi-protocol.
I mean, and some other pieces where I'm kind of host, but kind of presenter. I think about both use cases. Sometimes you have use cases that they need both block and file, whether it's the boot volume is one thing, the file data, you need something else. I mean, it's all being consumed by the same thing we're trying to do from an application standpoint or an internal customer standpoint. There's also sometimes I think the rules of cross protocol, doing like this, accessing the same file via NFS and SMB, where my historical joke is the first rule of that is cross protocol is don't do it. That's the second, third, and fourth rule. And then the fifth rule is like look very carefully about how the systems map permissions. Don't forget that, because we're going to come back to that joke later. I'll contradict myself.
Well, I think
Uh,
that is also a big part of consolidated storage, right? Because
mhm.
as I remember back when I used to play around with web servers a lot of people would host web servers on Apache servers, which ran off Linux most of the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And they would edit HTTP files on Windows machines, because that's what everybody had. Everybody had a Windows machine. And so all the IDEs and everything else were built for Windows. And so you need that multi-protocol access to the HTTP files to be able to like do that
Hmm.
work. And then that created its own set of problems, but a lot of up and coming solutions were building that type of model where you could access the data across both protocols.
The other piece I sometimes think about here, and I've used this kind of concept personally, and when I've looked at various pieces of the industry, parts of the industry landscape, is what I think of as a design center. Like when any given product was designed, what was it originally designed to do 10, 20, 30 years ago? What capabilities and features did it need as far as like the baseline stuff, before it could launch at all? And then even what were the prevailing technologies, open source libraries, things that you could use to build it, if you will. And the further you get from the design center, usually the messier things get. You can feel it, over time. You strap more and more things on top, or you kind of morph it. We can tell it really wasn't made to do this. And that's not a critique of any given product. And sometimes you see products with exceptional foundations where they both were able to draw the balance of seeing further into where the product might go versus what it had to be to get launched, kind of thing, and then make it as a company. So sometimes when I look at this space, the unified space, just both you and I, John, having spent a lot of time with different products here, you can kind of feel how a good bit of what's in this space for unified storage, maybe multi-protocol storage, like you said, it's pretty far from its original design center and what it was built to do. Nothing wrong with that. It's just reality. Okay, I think we are into Poll number 2. Olivia, if you don't mind kicking that off, and we'll then jump into section 3. So there we go. Awesome. Thank you. So curious as we're going to move into, kind of our approach to this, are curious to see here who you currently use for file storage, because this may be unified. It may not be. That's even something that's sometimes interesting. Sometimes you have unified or multi-protocol platforms, but you only use it for block. You only use it for file, even it can do both. We see that especially at larger customers. All right. And then candidly, we're curious. You're joining us today, so we're never going to be too pushy, but we're interested to know how many of y'all are looking at this space for either from I'm attending a coffee break for a free gift card, an interesting enough conversation in the afternoon, or you're actually like, you have some more specific intent here. So we'll come back to that poll in a second. So let's dive in, John, to how Pure is approaching this. Now, obviously, tear down this wall and how Pure truly unifies storage, whether it's a Ronald Reagan quote or a Pink Floyd reference, kind of alludes to a little bit of how we're approaching it. But there is a piece here of, where we started, and because we didn't start with file on FlashArray, we're talking about FlashArray. But do you mind kind of narrating, John, through a little bit of the history there? Because we had an acquisition. It's not the focus, but it kind of informs out the decisions that we make. Because we made some hard decisions along the way to do it the right way. So back to you if you don't mind to start through that.
Yeah, if we go through the full history, it's this file service is not our first time trying to do unified on FlashArray. We did do Windows servers before for a couple years. And that really did, there was quite a few customers found that helpful and useful, and they were familiar with that product enough to be able to make that be fully fledged. And we had really good success with it. And that just drove to the point that we needed something more. So we had to make decisions whether we built everything from scratch or did we go and get in, find a company that had protocol stacks that could work for us. We found a company out in Sweden called CompuVerde. If you read the word and you know Spanish, it looks like it's Campo Verde, but they call it CompuVerde. Surprisingly enough, in Swedish, it does mean green computing. But they were a software-defined, hardware-agnostic NAS product. They ran the OEM software behind IBM Spectrum NAS. So they had a mature protocol stack, both SMB and NFS. They had cross-protocol access. They had many of the features of an enterprise NAS solution. So we did acquire them. And then we took the decision, we had to make another decision at that point, whether we take their software and put it in a VM and just give it a block volume, call it a day and say, hey, we're done.
It's a fast route to market. There's an advantage there, but
and have two different, UXs to manage it and whatever else. Or do we actually look at it and say, how does this software can interact with Purity on FlashArray? And it turns out one of the other reasons we acquired them was because their software was layered. They kept their management and their storage software separate from their protocol stack. And so what we did is basically took their protocol stack, threw away most of their storage because we already have storage code, threw away their management because we already have management code, and basically integrated their storage stack directly into Purity, right alongside of the iSCSI and Fiber Channel protocol stacks. We didn't have them layer on top of each other. And this allowed us to do a lot of cool things. Basically, it says Purity had all these really nice things that have been developed over the years, like high availability, non-disruptive hardware changes, where you can go from data in place, hardware upgrades, block volumes that are thin provision across the global pool of storage.
Let me go here a little bit.
All that with file.
Keep going.
So like this slide is perfect.
Yeah.
So we also could take advantage of global dedupe across the entire array, which means we're not limited to the pool of storage that is, in some vendors where you have a pool of storage that's directly assigned to file, you can only dedupe within that pool. No, that you can dedupe file against block now and block against file. You can also take advantage of the entire global pool of storage. So as you increase your array size, you can take advantage of that for both block or file, whichever one you need to. Then we looked at the user experience for file out there. And a lot of these times, these vendors have developed features over time by different teams or even they've had to integrate different companies in, or they acquired somebody, took a piece of their code and integrated into theirs. Now the UXs all look different. We wanted a very simplistic UX. So we came out with a design where everything looks the same. It follows the simplicity that you see with pure block. So we have these things called managed directories you see here. Every file system becomes a root managed directory. So you don't manage file systems. You manage the root managed directory of a file system. And then you can manage any directory 7 layers below that you want to. You can create those on the array, and you can apply policies, and all the policies are managed the same. They have roles and they have managed directories they attach. So when you learn one policy, you've learned them all. Like, it's not hard to pick this up from day one and just start going with it. It's very easy to use. All the configurations are reusable, so you don't have to keep on reconfiguring things. If you need to, somebody comes up and says, hey, I need a new share for the HR department. Well, I already have a policy for HR. Bam, I just create a share, and I don't have to rethink all the configuration or re-ask for all the configuration.
I love the policies, especially because sometimes we have this balance we have to make between a UI being simple or working for small use cases and being able to scale out well. And policies, obviously, I'm going to say they hit to be a good balance in between. They're not super complex. We're not penalizing folks that want to run a little bit of file along with their block or have it for a more limited use case. But it also is built so that it can scale out effectively from a management overhead standpoint, even for potentially really large environments, kind of thing. So, love that. The other thing I think of here, actually, and this is now just a little bit of aside from a kind of a philosophy product development standpoint, is this is now going back to where you started, John, because I was going to put this in earlier, but this is kind of planned, but not totally, as I think everyone joining us knows, is when you look at this space, there's kind of the truism from maybe a Silicon Valley or a development standpoint that creating a good block platform, solid block platform, takes maybe 3 to 5 years. You've got to have amazing developers, do all the work, get it out so customers can find what are the most common corner cases, harden it up. Okay, that's 3 to 5 years, give or take. File is messier, right? It's about who controls the file system. Is it controlled to the client? Is it controlled to the server? And so the number there often that I've heard is in the 5 to 7 years, because even, for instance, we say SMB or we say SMB3. Well, what set of individual features do you mean inside that, right? Because SMB3 is really just like a superset of SMB2. So all that stuff has to be individually developed, and it takes time, and all of those things have corner cases and bugs you have to sort out and like all this stuff, right? So at this point, we chose, as you mentioned, John, to do this kind of what we think is the right way long term versus the fast way. We could have just put this on top, but the right way long term, because it's preserving, like it says here, the pure experience, the capabilities of pure on flash array. And I want to be a little cautious in a public forum saying this. So I realize that I believe we're the last company really investing in this area. And we think all the benefits of evergreen and non-disruptive migrations and upgrades and all that stuff, it applies to block. It applies even more to file. File migrations are so much more annoying than block migrations, kind of thing. So that same value, even more powerful.
Okay. Yeah, I think the last thing any sysadmin wants to do is a file migration, when you have to worry about the permissions and the cutovers, and if you lost the CEO's files somehow in the migration. I think being able to say, like, this is migrating to pure file is going to be the last migration you need to do. That's a wonderful thing. Like, and even then, when you do hardware upgrades, I mean, a lot of people claim to be able to do hardware upgrades, but they don't do data in place hardware upgrades. This is data in place hardware upgrades, which is, truly non-disruptive in that way. And I think that's really important to understand, is like, you're not going to spend days and weeks trying to plan out hardware upgrades. You get the same experience on file that you've had them block on flash array, being able to go up from one model to the next.
Make sure here I see one comment about the slides not sharing. Are you still able to see those, John, or those stop share? You can see them. Okay, so Ulysses, I think it may just be you, but I always appreciate the comment. I never want to have that be a problem. One last thing here before we go to use cases, John. I made a joke about cross protocol, and I think it was Calvin in the chat said he agreed with, like, don't do it, kind of thing. But I think even when we acquired CompuVerd, we got an acceleration of all the protocol features. That's a lot of work, real value there. But they'd also done something unique on the cross protocol front too, right?
They did. So CompuVerd solved that. The hardest use case to support on file normally is cross protocol, because you have all these permission issues and you have to decide who's doing what. So when they developed their code, they actually went all in. They designed it for cross protocol starting out. it actually wasn't designed for one protocol or the other. It was designed for truly cross protocol. And actually, when we first integrated them to FlashArray, at first we only supported cross protocol as well, because that's what their code supported. And we've since developed the ability to have individual protocols supported. But that's truly where they built it at. And so it really means that we have probably one of the best implementations across protocol there is. And it's really easy to manage. Like, you don't actually have to sit there and do a lot of granular management on the cross protocol for file services. It's like you just set it up. We use AD as our user mapping service. You don't have to manage like separate user mapper services and worry about where that's at on a DR range. You just configure it using Unix mappings and Windows, and we just automatically tie to that. It's really easy to set up and monitor.
I did see a great question. I'm probably going to mess up your name. Good, Jonathan. Thank you. I think Manish is responding to some of those. Thank you. We have Manish and Olivia and Carol here to help with the questions. We will do, as always, I didn't say this at the beginning, we'll do Q&A at the end here. We'll stay on to do kind of live Q&A, but please put them in the Q&A box as we're going along, as people have been. Thank you. But this is not inherently a competitor to FlashBlade. We're going to talk about that next. But let's talk about, maybe finish this section up, John. Just kind of mind walking through the overview of the use cases, because in some cases, file or NAS is almost a little bit, I don't want to say intellectually dishonest, but it's like that can mean so many things, right? So maybe kind of highlight where we focus the unified FlashArray file on.
Yeah, like I said, in my experience, like you have certain devices that do really well at certain things, and so we definitely have use cases where we shine through here, and these are the use cases here that we do. And a lot of the sub use cases will fall under general file applications, but we've had file service. We introduced file services originally in 2020, and we really just focused on user shares back then. But we've since expanded out. In our latest user share, use case that we've started to support is NFS data stores on VMware, and this isn't just like a dummy data store. This is with the VAI offloading for NAS, with certified data stores for VMware, with all the plugin support that you expect from Pure. So we wanted to give people, the pure VMware experience on NFS data stores, and I think there's some stuff we'll talk about what we did special there.
We'll dive in. Yep. But just as it was a sense, sometimes for folks, it's like, I'm hearing file. What does that mean? What are they really focused on? Okay, let's. I'm gonna first close out and share poll number 2, because that's what we always like to do as part of this. If you're kind enough to respond, or actually, frankly, if you're not, but in this case, we had over 800 people respond, so thank you. We'll end this poll and we'll share it back before we do poll 3. So always fascinating to just see kind of the landscape of who joined. So John, hopefully it makes you feel good. 13% of the respondents are using Pure for file storage. Hey, so that feels good. I think that might, I'm not sure what our market share is for file storage, but either way, I'll take it. 6% are still using Netware. That's pretty amazing. Maybe you're joking. I don't know. Or you just like, it's sitting there forever, I'm not touching it. And then there's a healthy mix of other stuff. And it is also always fascinating to me to see that, about a quarter, it's roughly split evenly looking now, 6 to 12 months, 12 months or longer. Any comments there, thoughts that brings to mind, John, before we keep going?
No, I mean, if you're looking, please give us, talk to your SE and see what we can do for you. We can look at your workloads and see if we're the right fit. We definitely don't, we're all about customer experience here up here and making sure you have the right experience. So that's why it's good to talk to your SE about it and just make sure everything lines up.
Then Olivia, if you don't mind launching poll 3 before we jump into the final section here. So you can see this one we kept relatively short. Frankly, we're curious if you're coming to this, did you even know that FlashArray could do file? Because there's a long history of amazing block storage on it, as well as your VMware environment, which is where we're going to dive into. What do you run that on today? So going into section 4, which is candidly what's new. There was a big announcement from a pure marketing standpoint within the last month or so, John. I want to say you did some recordings for that, folks. If you can go hear John on that, and I think Manish and other folks too. But there were really kind of 2 big things to focus on there. Well, one was, while we've had file on FlashArray kind of unified or on FlashArray for a while, it was diving further into the extension of the use cases and the focus there, as well as what you just mentioned, NFS data stores for VMware. So let's actually just start out with the use case thing, because I always appreciate the question. We wanted to take this head on, and I'm going to do this one in turbo mode a little bit of Pure has FlashArray and FlashBlade, and they compete with each other, right? No, actually, they're very intentionally created separately. And this isn't, we weren't making this up, John, when we planned this, like your story of being on the MSP side and seeing like all these different products. Now, Curse Pure, it's not a million different products, it's two specifically, but it's because of the different types of requirements. It's a mix of difference in capacity, large and small and large files, of file count. That can drive major things from a metadata and concurrency standpoint, of the use cases that drive difference in IOPS and capacity and bandwidth needed and latency, right? There's all these different things that go into this. And at core, there's two architectural choices: scale up and scale out. FlashArray always has focused on a scale up approach, leveraging Evergreen so you can swap things out and grow and change controllers out without the pain of migrations and disruptive upgrades, right? That's what FlashArray does. So we often see, like we showed before, quite a few use cases that really make sense there, but there is overlap in the use cases. So we covered this some actually a little bit a couple months ago with Justin Emerson with FlashBlade E, the launch of that. But we often see there are some use cases that fit better toward a scale-up type approach, or maybe even a unified sense. You want it all in one box or one type of platform. Some that fit better for a scale out. I'm not going to read them. You can read them here. But then often, frankly, the platform choice can actually depend on the scale. Is it a little bit of this? Is a lot of this? Is the main purpose of the box this? Is it going to grow to crazy bandwidth? You say, I want 100 gig of throughput on FlashBlade. Not super hard, an easy equation. You say, I want deduplication. Oh, that's not what FlashBlade does, or really any scale out system does well due to the nature of scale out. I kind of think, well, that's over on the FlashArray side. So this is where please engage. Oh, you can reach out to me and John, obviously, but engage your Pure account team, because there's only two of us for the world, the country. So, but we'll actually help walk through that and having a more intelligent discussion, hopefully, than just like, oh, all we've got is a hammer. Everything looks like a nail. There's just one platform. No, there's actually a bunch of different requirements that we ought to map to intelligently to help you be successful. That's the goal.
And
what did I leave out there, John, before I keep going, please?
I would just add to that, like, in the comment I made earlier is also that normally when you have like two platforms, they seem completely different managed. But when you go work on FlashBlade, guess what? You're gonna manage at file system level. That's how FlashBlade handles things. But you're gonna handle everything through policies. So you're gonna see very a known effort that FlashBlade and FlashBlade are aware of each other in the UX and the user experience, and that we want you to be able to use both in your environment for whatever needs you have. And then that way, you're using the best file product for the use case, and you're not trying to shove things into, silos, and into wrong places. Like, you basically can take advantage of FlashArray, you can take advantage of FlashBlade. And I think that's really nice that Pure's done this, that they realized long ago that we needed both. And they both need heavy investment to be able to do that.
It's based on the underlying requirements that we've both seen over our careers. Because sometimes we've tried to fit we've gone and tried to fit the square peg in the round hole, and you're like, "Ooh, I can make it fit," but it's going to be painful every month to deal with the operational challenges of it. Yep. So one part of that announcement was focused on the expansion of FlashArray file use cases, or even sometimes we're beating the drum about it a little bit more, kind of thing, to be honest. But then also there was a very specific piece about launching support, not just as a me too checkbox kind of thing, like, oh, we do that as well, but some real intentionality around thinking about NFS data stores for VMware, which for me is actually, I started with iSCSI for VMware, and then I did NFS for VMware. This is years back. You can guess the platforms, but do you mind walking through some of what we looked at from a kind of a challenge and landscape standpoint there?
Yeah, so obviously we identified within the marketplace a lot of pain points that people have been seeing. These pain points come from real customers. Like, this isn't just something we can, went out on our own and said that existed. These came from multiple conversations with, people using other vendors. And a few of these is, data store size for NFS, because people had limited file system size, like 100 terabytes or whatever, 256 terabytes. They had to really plan out their storage needs. And it felt, as I would see this, I kept on thinking, this kind of reminds me of a game where you play with blocks and you would always wait for one single, straight line block to fall down, and something would mess you up, and you would, so Tetris basically. And I said, man, it feels like you're playing Tetris within these limits. The next thing that they wouldn't offer is they wouldn't let you manage the VMs on the array. Like you would just have to manage the data store. If you want to do anything with the VMs, you have to go through VMware, and you couldn't really, like a snapshot, for example, you had to take the whole data store. Like, so that meant any like VMs you didn't really care about, you still got those. So you got like this snapshot bloat that always occurred. Then lastly is when you were trying to like set it up and everything, like I went through several setup docs and they were like several pages long, and you had to hop between one interface and to the array and back to the interface and back to the array and double check everything and make sure it was all working. And I was just like, if we're going to build this, why can't we just do this much easier? Why can't we make this a less complicated solution than, you know, what exists? So that's where we came up with the pure differentiation for this. And so
keep going, you're on a roll.
We because our file systems are unlimited, we have unlimited data store size. So no more in the Tetris game. The next thing is we decided to make every VM a managed directory. So using that, we got a couple different things. You got to be able to see space and capacity and performance data on each VM. You also got to take VM snapshots. Like you didn't have to take a snapshot of the entire data store. You could, but you weren't forced to. And then lastly, when we built out the plugin support, we're just like, why? We know how to make data stores for NFS.
The button.
And we just automate this. And so we made a kind of a one-stop shop plugin experience where you don't have to hop between interfaces to like set up your data store and manage your data stores and connect a new one. You can just go over and tell it, hey, here's the array. Here's the ESX host I want to do. It'll create the NFS export, set all the rules up, everything it needs to do. That's all automated there. So it's like, why live in the past where it's like, we don't know what to do for you. We know what to do for you. And it gives you lots of options there, because you can have a data store that's a file system. You can have a data store that's just in a managed directory within a file system. You got lots of options. But the key is, like, I love this quote, by the way. I thought of this quote all the time when I thought about, playing this Tetris game with your data stores. The only winning move is not to play that game.
If anyone wants to put in the chat, I'm not going to say this one. That is yet another movie reference, so feel free to put it in if you know what it is. If everyone's still paying attention, hopefully. Bam, that was fast from Calvin, but other folks can chime in. I'm still not going to say it that way if you're not saying. So the other piece I think of here, John, is that if for folks who joined us back in January, I want to say we had David Stamen on, and we were talking about a lot of different VMware things, because that's a lot of what he focuses on. I think it was January recently. You can go back, folks can look at the log. Some of what you're talking about almost feels a little bit like vVols, what we do over on the block side. Do you mind kind of drawing out that connection a little more?
Yeah, so vVols, you're managing things at the VMDK level, right? But we wanted to give you a taste of that by letting you manage things at the VM level. So we don't go all the way down to the VMDK level. Doesn't mean we couldn't in the future, because obviously we could make every VMDK a managed directory as well if we wanted to. Let us know if that's something you want. But, it lets you see this granularity of control. It lets you take control of your VMwares if you are using NFS data stores, if you want to continue using different stores. This is not saying like move off our block product to the file. This is more for people who have this environment, they need to keep this environment, or they have a use case where this is required. We want to give them the flexibility and let them be able to do what they want. So in these two examples, for example, I was talking like, hey, you could have a file system as a data store, or you could even have a subdirectory as a data store, because we don't restrict you. We let you do whatever you want there. And you can do the same thing with both. Like you can have VMs underneath there. And we automatically do all that for you. So once you've decided where the data store is at, and you've got it set up into ESX, when you're creating new VMs in that data store, we'll create the managed directories for you. That's all automated. And then the only thing you would have to do is go decide how you want the snapshot policies to run. So
I think there's
lots of options there.
One piece there that you mentioned I want to make sure to highlight is this is us embracing folks that want to use NFS for VMware. We still have an amazingly strong set of capabilities, market leading around VMware block integration, all these pieces. And we're going to continue pushing that further. That's been long standing. We're also offering to people that say, this really makes sense in my environment. I have specific reasons, et cetera, but we want to do it in the pure way versus just like, yeah, sure, you can use it for NFS. We did just enough QA to get on the HCL or the compatibility with VMware. No, let's like actually do it better. I think with that, John, we are actually right about on time for folks that stayed with us. Thank you. We'll do the drawing in just a second. Hopefully it feels like, as always, we went through a good bit, whether a little bit of history and the landscape and even our core architecture, and then some of the new stuff, because there's truly, like, most recently, innovation going on here. Anything that I left out, John, that you want to highlight before we move over to the drawing and Q&A? I'm not letting you go yet, but any final thoughts?
I would say, come visit us at Accelerate. So Manish, who you mentioned, is the director of PM. He's a great rock star guy. You'll see him down at Accelerate. I think both of us have some talking sessions. Come and see us. Let us know what you need, how we can help you guys out. If you're interested in file services, please reach out to your county and let them know, and we'll get you on the road to using it. And we want to make sure, and if you see, something you want, let us know as well. We're always
based on your feedback.
Improve the product over time. We got lots of cool stuff coming on the roadmaps. This is a heavily invested product line for Pure, so lots of good stuff coming in the future as well.
We do truly see a lot of opportunity here. Like I said, we believe we may be one of the last, if not the last, truly investing in this space. And by the way, for anybody who had joined us last month, you might have noticed that the title changed. You might be able to guess at some of the reasons for that, but there's still a little bit of an Easter egg in the graphic there. So, you can have fun with the ice cubes dropping into the coffee there. But to wrap up, thank you, John. Let's share the poll. Let's do the drawing. Then we'll kind of let our hair down, such as we have it, and do some open Q&A. So let me end the poll here, and I will share it back. So have you heard about file services on FlashArray? So this is cool. 3/4 had already heard about it. But at the same time, that means 1/4 of the folks joining us today had not heard about it. So, hey, hopefully you feel like you learned something, and maybe you have some interest here. And then, do you run your VMware environment on NFS today? So that's decently split. And if anything, actually, block only is in the minority there, with either NFS or a combo in the lead. So that's kind of cool to see. For drawing, as always, we end with a drawing for a Ember 12-ounce travel mug. Retail value, I think it's 130 or maybe it's 199. You can go look up on Amazon, but you won't find the one on Amazon that has, the cool logos and stuff on it, of course. That the winner today is Brad A. from Texas. Thank you so much for joining us, Brad. Please, as well, make sure to join us again next month with Pete Kirkpatrick. We're going to talk about, if you love software, into making hardware, and pretty interesting and cool hardware. We're going to dive behind the curtain a little bit of Pure's hardware lab, super secret hardware lab too, a little bit of a look behind the curtain. With that, John, I think we are into, we can kind of relax a little bit. We basically stayed on time as far as what we were hoping to do, but for everybody, we target about 45 minutes for the content side. And we just kind of relax a little bit. So Manish has done an amazing job with keeping up with answering questions. But there are some new ones coming in, and I think, if you don't mind, John, I may I'll kind of turn the music up here a little bit, because this is where it gets a little relaxed. Keep it low.
Yeah.
And may even go through and answer some of the, kind of pull up some of the questions that he has already answered, just because I think they may be worth sharing with everybody here too. The first one that I think I want to talk to you about is this is probably worth just re-highlighting, because we spent a little bit of time on it, but went fast. So, is this competition to FlashBlade? I think you're going to say yes, and you have fights every day internally with your corresponding product managers, or no? Is that not how it works?
No, actually, we're like, me and Manish are best friends with the product manager on FlashBlade. We meet quite often to talk about the product lines. No, I think they're complementary, not competition. So the idea there is that is there use cases that both can do equally, in certain scale sizes equally well? Yeah. And that comes down to consolidation, ideology. Is like, again, what do you want to consolidate onto what platform? Because like I said, a lot of times you're not just doing one of these use cases. You got multiples that you need to, house. So which ones do you want to do? Are you doing user shares with some PAX data? Oh, we'll probably look at FA. Are you doing PAX data with some archive or some AI? Okay, then we want to go to FlashBlade there, because those are the good mix. The idea here is that whatever your spectrum of flash file storage is, we're there for you. We've got a place to house it. We're going to give you the Pure experience, the evergreen experience. I can't tell you, when I first started at Pure, when we first started getting a file, like how many people told me, hey, can't we just get the file experience, the Pure version of file experience? We're doing this.
Customers want.
And so I think that's where we're headed, and we got lots of future stuff that we may even consider. Obviously, you don't see file databases on here because we do such a good job on block, So I
In
tell
some
people like, you
cases.
might want to
Yeah.
move those a block, but there'll be lots of opportunity here, and we just want to make sure everybody has a home.
There's even a little bit of kind of history I want to put in here too of when FlashBlade started. And now this is about what you're doing as a startup. So FlashBlade was a startup within a startup. Okay, so FlashArray started. A couple years later, FlashBlade started as a startup within a startup. And when you're doing that, you look at where there are gaps in the market that you can do development against and drive into and get a couple year competitive advantage and lead. That's how you make it as a startup. So FlashBlade looked at areas that frankly weren't being served by the classic file market, to be honest, around crazy concurrency and scale and throughput and other pieces that FlashBlade does really well to actually kind of almost like a little bit of a category creator product. What we're doing with FlashArray is taking the core goodness of FlashArray into the general purpose file market. That's not diminishing it, but it's general purpose where frankly, everybody here has an incumbent in this space. You're already using something else for it. Whereas FlashBlade sometimes came in like where you needed something, you didn't have anything yet. So you don't necessarily start out as a startup by going into a crowded space. Now, as you get larger and you play out all the benefits of Evergreen and other stuff, then it makes sense to invest there, which is what we've done. So there's even some kind of thoughtfulness about the product timing here. Just it's good product management discipline, if you will.
Yeah, and I think, you know, in the relationship we have between the product teams is very strong, so that we can make sure the user experience is kept true to Pure on both products.
Yeah, feels similar, like the same company at least. There's a question from about NFS v4, and even and about kind of FS Logic's user profiles. That's going to get a little bit specific, but anything you want to comment there about either kind of NFS and FS Logic user profiles. Some of these always, by the way, will be, hey, reach out individually because we have things coming. We don't say timelines publicly, but you mind commenting on either of those?
Well, I can't comment on NFS v4 because we did announce it at our launch that we just did for file NFS data stores. We will be. It is something we are going to have this summer, so I'll be looking for it in the August timeframe for NFS v4.1 is what we'll be supporting.
Sweet.
So that will be there, and that will also come with support for data stores on v4.1 as well. As for FS Logic,
we're going to user profiles in general too.
Yeah, the user profiles is something we do. We do running profiles very well. It's a good use case for us. I usually just say, hey, talk to your account team to look at sizing, see what FlashArray model you need, and things like that. Because obviously we're a scale up file solution, so different models of FlashArray have different file performance.
I sometimes think there with user profiles are sometimes a VDI discussion, but not necessarily, right? It may be related to that. Yeah.
FS Logic comes in a couple different flavors, whether you're using it with Citrix, using it with Microsoft RDS. If you're using it for virtual hard drive with app caching, or if you're using it just for the running profiles, there's some different things there. Different ones have different things that you'd want to talk to your account team with.
Next one, I think there is a question. This is just a very specific one, but I also want to highlight too that the question is, what is the individual file size maximum top? There is also as well, there's a great, and this is absolutely available to Pure customers. I'm not sure if it's actually available publicly on the internet because it wouldn't necessarily be, but it actually shows all the maximums on FlashArray file because every product has maximums and we want to be upfront about those kind of things. So I'm actually going to play Stump the Chump here, John, because Manish already answered this. Maybe you see the answer. What's the individual size limitation? File size.
64 terabytes.
Boom, you win. Okay, cool.
And we do publish those to customers only.
And this is about being just being real. Sometimes you're starting out in a landscape and competitors may be looking for stuff, but we want to be very transparent to our customers. And you ask us, because any product has maximums. Of course they do.
I think all the if you went and looked at the NAS limits for competitors, you would find that they also only publish them to customers. It's kind of a general rule. It's not like we have a lot of limits. I mean, we don't really have. I mean, like file system size, we don't have a limit there. So.
The limit page is the size of the box.
Kind of small, but we do have limits.
It's actually a little like the block side of FlashArray too. Like the file system, you can have one file system that's the maximum size of FlashArray. You can have one block volume that's the maximum size of FlashArray, which is kind of crazy to think about sometimes. Maybe last one here, I think, in case there's always more streaming in, which is we've already kind of leave this open, and multiple folks saying, thanks, and they appreciate it, and good thank you. That's actually encouraging sometimes. And if please always feel free to reach out to me directly, by the way, because like some of what we cover is based on your feedback. We'll probably be doing some polls around that again in the next month or two. Possibly last one here, John, is from Calvin. He's kind of trying to follow the managed directory concept, the managed file system, and asking if it's similar to nested mounted file systems. And I'm not won't want to kind of have you do a full deep dive, but it feels like, just since we're in Q&A mode, a little bit of another discussion around managed directories and file systems might make a little bit of sense, if you don't mind.
It could be kind of like nested mounted file systems to a certain extent. It's just less complex. It really is just, you are identifying folders within a file system that are important, that you want to do stuff. Because obviously you're going to have all the rest of the folders. You could have folders in the same level of that file system that are not managed directories. Mm-hmm. So to an end user, a managed directory just looks like any other folder. But I think it's probably less complicated than nested file systems.
That'll be the general sense. I mean, we want to have some layers of a layer of abstraction, but then where we can apply policies on, but not more than needed. And even following that thread for a second, help me out there as we talk about the policies. There's different policy types. Oop, I didn't mean to change that slide. Apologies. Let me get back here. So, you can do snapshot policies, export policies. That's, the mounts for NFS or SMB quotas. And then those can even go multiple layers deep too, is right. If you don't mind, keep going there if you would.
Any policy at any layer. So if you start with the root directory being level 1, we can go 8 levels total. And then, as wide as you need to go. But at that point, you could have nested quotas all the way down to that 8th level if you needed to, for whatever reason. And that can actually change how your mount points look. So if you're, sharing out that subfolder and you want the mount point to be different than the file system looks like, you can do that by setting another quota there. And we will always show the client, when they mount a managed directory, whatever its hard quota sizes is what the mount point, the DF will show, or the Windows map drive will show the size of. So let's say you have a file system that's limited to 10 terabytes. If I didn't put any subquotas, all my shared folders would show up as 10 terabytes. Everything. But then I could put subquotas of like 500 gigs or a terabyte, and now those map drives would show up as a terabyte, even though the file system can hold 10. So you can do a lot of things, and we did account for in case you do over provision for some reason. Let's just say you increased the nested quota, but you forgot to increase your parent quota. We will dynamically show the map drive space as the most restricted quota to that managed directory. That way, your end users never have to worry about knowing how much space is available to them in a share.
Well, and obviously through this session, for those of there's still a good number of people with us still. Thank you for staying. Some of what you were just walking through, John, is when I kind of gave the summary of like policies and the other pieces can help you get to serious scale while working out operationally, because there's flexibility that you can adjust things around as needed without being like, oh, I made this decision 2 years ago. No, I'm really stuck. I've got to do crazy redo it. Some of what you just hit on is what gives kind of the heft beneath that statement, if you will.
Yeah, many of these things you can change on the fly without disrupting it. You don't have to disconnect a policy to edit it, for example. So you can keep your share alive and edit the rules. You don't have to re-all do all that. Or if you have that policy attached to multiple directories, you could detach it from one and just update the one directory if you needed to. Or you can update all of them by just editing the policy itself. So lots of ways to be able to extend yourself into bigger configurations without having to do a lot more work. Basically, the whole title of this thing, letting the file server work for you instead of you working for the file server. Mm-hmm. That's the whole idea of the policies.
Where that came from. So with that, I think we are at time. John, thank you for being an awesome guest. As frankly, I know you would be, but thank you. Please make sure to join us next month again with Pete Kirkpatrick about Behind the Curtain of Pure's Hardware Labs. And thank you so much from the entire Coffee Break team: Olivia, Emily, Carol, Manish. Thank you for the questions. John, thank you for being a great guest. Hope to see many of you next week at Accelerate, and if not, to see you on next month's Coffee Break. Thanks. Have a great day.
Have a good one, everybody.